Okay. That gives us 4.
Sorry I'm late.
That's okay. I mainly wanted to make sure you were joining.
Yeah, my other meeting ran over.
Okay. Okay, so I will call the February, well, we need to start, we are recording, okay. The February 11th, 2021 Town of Northwood Planning Board meeting to order at 7:05. Board members can introduce themselves for the record at your convenience.
Al Kreider?
Betty Smith.
Go ahead, Tim.
Vandiver.
Bob Strobel, chair. Voting designation is same. We have minutes of January 28th to cover,
Motion
and I'd
to
entertain a
accept the
motion to that
minutes.
effect.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Betty Smith, second by Mr. Kreider. Discussion, just note in line 8 where on Susan on present, just add a note that Tim Jandeber Joe McCaffrey joined at 8:29. That's mentioned later in the minutes, but it should be there as well under present.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm with
I
you.
mean, okay, yeah.
It just makes it succinct at the front.
Sure.
So other than that, I had nothing else. If anybody else have anything they want to see
No,
changed.
good.
Okay. And I'll go back. Well, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Susan, I can do a roll call vote, please.
Tim,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. And Susan, I'll just be very brief on this. I would still love to have at the very top of the minutes in line 1 of like, we heard, cases 21-2, 21-3, 21-4 on there. So, because then I could save all the PDFs and know which ones are affected. But no worry about it. Okay, first up, we have case 19-6, Joseph Carter, Fatherland Family Trust. If we have someone here who's joined the meeting who is representing the client or this applicant, please say so I know who you are.
Joe Carter,
Okay.
treasurer, and for Fatherland Family Trust, present.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Can
Let's
I go
see.
ahead or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. In response to my last correspondence, it's January 30th to the board, I did talk with Linda Strickland from the CMA engineers that represent the town, and they thought it would be a conflict of interest. But she did give me a name of someone that could finish it up for me if Mr. Bird, the original engineer, refuses to do so.
Okay.
So if you could put this off to the next meeting, I should have all the answers you're looking for. And then I also talked with the DOT, with Mr. Roger Appleton. Everything's okay on the entrance. They're writing up some type of covenant for the easement in case we had a drop. He did point out that he thought one of the drop shots was near the pipe, and they would be concerned because it's shallow.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to write off whatever they want me to. And he said I should have everything by the next meeting. So hopefully you'll extend it to the next meeting for me, and I'll have all the answers in there.
Okay. Well, can we legitimately take that as a request for continuance?
Yes, please.
Yes, I think we can. It's better to have something in writing, but we have this on the recording, and with the emergency orders that give us the ability to continue cases beyond the normal statutory deadlines, those are still in effect and have been for almost a year at this point. So I think we're okay to take that as a request to continue. Yeah, I concur with Mr. Carter that it seems like we're close to getting those answers. I have the same understanding from Jody Strickland that there isn't much left that we need, but I would like to see those answers from Mr. Carter's team come back. And so that's the one milestone that I'm looking for. The other, obviously, I also managed to speak to Mr. Appleton today. And I think it sounds like part of the issue is, as Mr. Carter mentioned, the overlap of DOT's easement, drainage easement on the property and a pipe that's within it is in the vicinity of the golf course. Mr. Appleton said he wasn't overly concerned about the fact that there would be pavement over the top of the pipe. That's not the issue. The issue is obviously in the future, if they needed to repair that pipe, they may need to impact a hole or something like that. So he said that they're still discussing a few options with Mr. Carter for how to resolve that. The one thing that I would say is, obviously, if there are any changes to the plan as a result of that, moving things one way or another to avoid that pipe, we need those to be done before we can
Okay.
push the approval, or we're going to have to take this all over again to move stuff around. So those are my only concerns, and I have no problem with Mr. Carter's request to continue.
Okay, just double checking, and note for the record that Joe McCaffrey has joined us at 7:10 and is added to the voting designation. And I neglected to read the emergency order at the start of the meeting. But very briefly, as chair of the North Planning Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. That covers us. Okay, anything, do we have any members of the public here who are planning or would like to speak on 19-6? Okay, hearing none, I will close public comment for this evening, subject to reopening at the next meeting or as needed. And I would, Mr. Carter, when you talk to when you're talking next meeting, we're talking next month, is that correct?
Yes, the next meeting, is that, the next meeting is next month?
Yeah, well, yeah, we have 2 meetings a month, and usually
I should have everything.
have everything by sometime in March.
Yes, I should, no problem.
Okay. Trying to think what we have on the schedule. Do we have anything for meetings? Would be the 11th and the 25th,
Correct.
I believe.
I don't think we have any scheduled yet.
Say again, Susan.
Nothing that we've continued anything to yet. You know.
Yep.
We'll get cases in probably.
Yeah, certainly we'll get cases in.
It's
Okay.
wide open right now.
Excuse me, do you have a meeting on the 11th and the 25th?
We do, and we generally reserve the first meeting of the month for workshops, but that's been the,
Oh, okay. So
We
I'll
sort
be
of,
on for the 11th?
well, at this point in time,
If we
Really
get
doesn't
new
matter.
things for March, they'll be noticed for the 25th.
right.
So we would not be discussing new cases on the 11th.
Correct.
Okay.
So right now,
If you're in
yes, we're open for a motion to continue.
Well, I'll make a motion that we continue the Carter Family Trust application to the 25th of next month, March.
Okay, we have a second.
Second,
Okay, Betty spoke first, so motion by Mr. McCaffrey, second by Ms. Betty Smith to continue 19-6 to March 25th. Discussion? Hearing none, Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Al,
yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes,
Tim,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay, we'll talk to you on the 25th, Mr. Carter. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for listening to me tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Okay. Whoops. Next up is case 21-1, Stephen Susi. We had a chance to open this last time, and I believe in between that time, we got a revised plan set.
Yep.
In
Good
color,
one.
which is appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I will open case 21-1. Okay. Pull up my notes here. Mr. Blaisdell, you want to bring us up to speed?
Yeah.
On any
At the
changes?
last meeting, you said you'd like to have some of the lines to be more clear, so I made the wetland lines thicker and darker, and I made the setback lines a little bit more obvious. And you wanted to know how much wetland was on the lot, so I've added that. The 7-acre lot has 5.32 acres of upland and 1.68 acres of wetland, and the 5-acre lot has no wetland. I believe that those are the only issues that you had.
Okay, that sounds correct by my recollection, but I'll defer to, I'm getting a head nod from our town planner, so.
Yeah, both of those changes, as Mr. Blaisdell made them, look good to me. So the proposed condition of approval that I had in my staff report for changes to the plan set, yeah, I'm satisfied, and I would remove that condition and renumber all of the subsequent conditions accordingly.
Okay. And I'm just double checking through my notes. Well, we have it in. Yep, that'll be fine. I mainly am double checking that on the plan set where the driveway for the proposed left-hand lot comes in. You know, it's stated proposed driveway meeting town standards for site distance, which is fine. But we have it in the minutes that were just approved. Line 31, he noted, it's referring to Mr. Blaisdell, primarily because of how close the driveway is to the wetland buffer. It appears that the driveway should be able to get in without going through the wetland buffer, but he did note that if it needs to, they would expect that it needs to be a gravel driveway within the wetland buffer portion, or that there would be some sort of ZBA relief to allow a paved driveway. So we have that as a public statement, and that covers my concerns for it. I don't think we need a note on the plan set for that effect.
Bob,
Yes,
just a question. The drive is across from, I believe, another road or another drive. So I guess the presumption is there's sight distance. Did we actually have a diagram or something to check that?
The road is straight as an arrow. You can see hundreds of feet each way.
Yeah, it may be, but did somebody draw it out or anything with elevations, or how do we know?
Uh,
How do we document that that is indeed the case? I guess is really what it comes down to.
we have a note on the plan that says that it will meet this town standards for site distance. So the applicant has stated it as such. I haven't measured it myself, but I know that road fairly well, and I agree that the site distance is fantastic there, but again, I haven't measured it.
Talking about Bryant Road? Is Hal talking about Bryant?
Yes, it's
Across
either
the
right.
street? Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
I
I
mean,
think it's
the
Brian.
site distance there is forever.
Yeah.
That's a great site distance.
Personally, I'm not too worried about it, but
I'm not either.
it is, this is the time to double check or to verify that if you want.
I don't
I'm
think you
satisfied.
verify it if somebody can, I mean, let's say it this way. It's a licensed surveyor, right?
Correct.
And others are confirming it. So I don't have a problem per se, as long as you say that that documentation is sufficient.
Well,
So Hal, for context, for a subdivision, the reason that we want a driveway location on a subdivision plat is to demonstrate that the proposed plat and the proposed lots are buildable. But it's typically not understood that that driveway location is a commitment to necessarily having the driveway in that place. So if Mr. Blaisdell went to get a driveway permit and couldn't get one from the road agent based on site distance or any of another number of other factors and needed to put it in a different place, we wouldn't consider for a driveway location to need to amend the subdivision to have that driveway enter from a different location.
Okay, good.
So I think this is a matter of what information you need to be satisfied that the parcel is buildable and approvable under the subdivision regulations. If you need to see a site distance profile to be satisfied, you're within your rights to request it. But if you're satisfied without that information, you can't approve it.
Well, the others in the planning board are saying they're comfortable, no reason not to believe them. And like you said, if there's a problem, you know, there is also probably a means to access from the other road, so.
there still has to be a driveway before it's buildable. Yeah, before it's buildable, you has to get a driveway permit from the road agent.
Yeah, but I mean,
Oh.
to what James was saying was, if for some reason, because of the wetlands or whatever, they decide not to put it there and they want to move it elsewhere, it looks like there's good options elsewhere also.
Can I enter this, Bob? Can I enter
Yeah,
this
go ahead.
talk? The
Go ahead.
issue I have, and I know I brought it up fleetingly last meeting, I have absolutely no problem with where they want to put the driveway. None whatsoever. My issue with the town is later, when they go to get a driveway permit from the road agent and they put it somewhere else and the road agent okays that, that's where my problem is. And we have had that issue, and I can show you many, for instances, in this town where that has happened, and that negates the site plan. So the issue is we need to make sure as a town, whoever does that, and we have a selectman on the panel here, that the road agent understands that it has to be put where the plan shows. And if it's put where the plan shows, there is a ton of site each way.
Yeah, but what
Yeah, Tim,
what
I
Dean
don't.
is saying is we don't have to do that.
If this was a site plan application, the driveway needs to go where the driveway is shown. This is not a site plan application. This is a subdivision application. And my understanding of, the common understanding of subdivisions, beyond Northwood in New Hampshire is that, yes, you can require a driveway location to be shown as evidence that the property is buildable. but that the location of that driveway on a subdivision plat is not binding on the applicant if there is an equally suitable location someplace else on the property.
With a site distance.
If I
That
can
goes with
jump in
regulation.
They
for
would
a
still need to
second,
meet
please.
site distance. They would still need to
Yeah.
satisfy all conditions of, having it be a
I
legal
would be More
driveway.
than happy to take any one of you and show you where
Yeah.
that didn't work.
Right. Well,
If I could
Yeah, but
jump
that's
in
not
for
the
just a
planning
minute.
board's issue. That's an
No, it's not.
operational
I
issue.
agree with that.
Right.
And that's really my point. As far as the planning board issue, they have a wonderful site distance,
Sure.
both
Leave it
directions.
on.
Linda, go ahead.
I was just going to confirm what Tim said as far as there have been issues in the past that the driveways have been issued where in a location that was not on the subdivision plat that does not have adequate site distance. And I would agree with Hal, it's an internal problem. It had been addressed internally in that there was 2 people looking at driveway permits, and I'm not sure that's happening, but since it's been raised again, I will certainly bring that topic up with the town administrator so we can be sure that there's a checks and
Yeah.
balance so that doesn't happen.
Okay. Thank you for that.
My feeling is with Walter, there's not going to be much you can
Okay.
spy with him.
Well, he's
Okay.
not the one that would be,
May I,
I'm just saying that, a process by which
Yeah,
internally it doesn't happen.
yeah, I think he's
Okay.
pretty good.
Joe, go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I guess I want to comment related to what Tim said. What he referred to has happened numerous times in the past. In my brief,
Okay.
not only since I've been on the planning board, but in other situations I'm aware of in town over the past decade. So, taking into account what James said, that may or may not be so. I'm not sure how much it is, but let's go at it this way. The problem is, if it's from my perspective and from what I have seen happen in the past, if you approve a driveway, we approve a driveway as presented on an application, and it meets as apparently it does. A number of people seem to have a clear perspective. There's plenty of site distance. We require 150 feet on either side of a driveway for.
Joe, do we lose you? Oh, there we go.
Maybe
Spotty.
that this. Okay. It may be that this lot, you can move the driveway anywhere along it, and it would still satisfy. That would be great. But there are instances where lots are very sensitive to the location of the driveway. You move them twice, and you now have violated site distance proprieties. I'm wary of. I can think of numerous instances, especially on curved and hilly sites,
Sure.
where you very easily can go out of the site distance requirement. And if it's left to the discretion of the later builder, then that's no good. It would seem to me if we approve a driveway positioning as offered, presented, then if somebody wants to change it, I'm not against them changing the location of what they're suggesting, but I would think they would then have to reapply for that change.
Well,
No,
That is to say, unless we have allowed for various changes up front.
okay. What I suggest
I don't know
is,
if that all came. I'm sorry, Bob. I don't know if it all came through. I'm in a very dicey
Yeah.
location where I'm just on the edge of getting through. So
we got most of it.
hopefully, okay.
So what I suggest so instead of wasting Mr. Blaisdell's time on town policy
Right.
or operations stuff, do we have anyone in the meeting who would like to speak on this application for a public hearing? Okay. Hearing none, I will close public comment on case 21-1. And is there anything else from town staff on this application?
I can reread the conditions of approval as they stand if you'd like. Otherwise, I have nothing
Please.
else.
That'd be good. Just
Okay.
for, so it's clear.
So as I said, Mr. Blaisdell's changes to the plan satisfy my prior condition number 1. So what I have remaining for conditions of approval prior to the signing of plans, number 1, the applicant will acquire and provide copies of all necessary federal, state, and local permits to the town, including but not limited to a town of Northwood driveway permit, except as specifically denoted below. Number 2, provide certification of monument installation as required by section 3.06 of the subdivision regulations. Number 3, deliver 3 signed and stamped copies of the plan, paper copies of the plan, and 1 signed and stamped Mylar to the town for signature. Prior to the issuance of a building permit. Number 4, record the plat with the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds within 1 year of this decision. Number 5, provide a state-approved septic design for each lot prior to issuance of a building permit for that lot.
With the person who's in the meeting as SF, could you please mute yourself? We're getting a lot of feedback. Of course, thank you.
Could I ask James to repeat the portion of the conditions? I'm not sure if I'm coming through, but could James repeat the portions of the conditions? Number 2, I think it was, regarding the driveway. What is it? It says is referred to below or something like that. What is it?
The applicant will acquire and provide copies of all necessary federal, state, and local permits to the town, including but not limited to a town of Northwood driveway permit, except as specifically denoted below. That specifically denoted below refers to the state-approved septic design prior to issuance of a building permit, and it was because we have had several requests over the years to tie septic to a building permit instead of subdivision, just because from a timeline perspective, you put the septic design together when you know what the building's going to look like. And that isn't necessarily something that everybody who's building or subdividing knows at the time they come in for subdivision approval.
Okay, James, I understand that. I guess what I was picking up on was, it seemed to me at the beginning of that number 2, maybe I got the number wrong, referring to the driveway, see below, was there a reference to the driveway specifically as to where it's located or anything like that?
There is no reference to driveway location. So the number 2 is our standard language, all necessary federal, state, and local permits. And then I normally put it in including but not limited to every state and local permit that I'm aware of that the applicant will need. But we leave the generic language up top. So what I'm saying with this is they need a driveway permit for that new driveway location. And it needs to be issued by the town. And then the other state permit that is required at a different point in the timeline is the septic.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I understand what you say about the driveway. We don't need it
easy with
before.
that if I
Hang on one
was
second.
confident the road
Go ahead,
agent
Phil.
was aware of the.
And he dropped off.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, it's obvious. I mean, the reference to the road agent approving is fine, as long as the road agent is really clear about what the town ordinance
Right.
site distances are regarding driveways.
And that's
I mean,
one of the
you know,
requirements.
you know, you'd say that's obvious. What?
Two conversations going on at once. Joey, I think we got your point.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
Mr. Blaisdell was trying to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you looking for a driveway permit before you sign the Mylar? Or are you just saying there has to be one before a house is put in?
Currently, the way that I have these structured, we would be looking for driveway permit prior to signing the Mylar.
Okay, because there's two roads. Whoever buys this lot, they have two choices of roads to come off. I've never seen you have to have a driveway permit before a Mylar is signed. I guess it's not a big deal. They can get a permit, and if a new buyer comes and he wants to put somewhere else and it's a wonderful site distance, then he should be able to put it in the other location. Generally, when you do a driveway permit, you show where it's going to go. You put flag in or stake. The road agent goes out and stands there and he confirms it. So I would assume, but however you want to make it work.
Anyone have any preference?
Bob, I'm just going to say that I think the system that we have works fine. The breakdown is not at the planning board.
Right.
And I think that Linda explained that very well.
Yep.
And I think that she's going to make sure that our new town administrator understands the situation and our concerns and is going to make sure that he pushes that information on.
Okay.
So personally, I'm perfectly happy with the way we work things now.
Okay.
The breakdown's not on the planning board.
Correct.
And
and
we
I agree.
can fix it via the planning board.
It's not something I want to deal with tonight. I'd rather find out is more. My point was, Mr. Blaisdell has said, the intent is to sell this. He's shown that there is at least a suitable driveway location that might be changed based on the builder. And, let me think more about that.
So that is currently condition 1 under prior to the signing of plans.
We would move it.
If you wanted to move it, I would just renumber things. So we have a new 1 and 2 for under the signing of plans, and that could be condition 3 prior to issuance of a building permit.
Yeah.
Explain my thinking on that.
That's where Tim and I were nodding because that's where we thought it was.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if you wanted to do that, then since all of the external permits would be under the same thing, I would combine the septic design and the other federal, state, local permits into one item. So the conditions for that, I would read them as prior to the signing of plans. Number 1, certification of monument installation. Number 2, deliver 3 signed and stamped paper copies and 1 signed and stamped Mylar prior to issuance of a building permit. Number 3, record the plat within a year of this decision. Number 4, the applicant will acquire and provide copies of all necessary federal, state, and local permits to the town, including but not limited to a Town of Northwood driveway permit and a state-approved septic design for each lot as necessary prior to issuance of a building permit for that lot.
So I'd like to say 2 things to that. Number 1, I would love to see this discussion further in a work session.
Yes.
Number 1. Number 2, I make a motion to approve the application with the conditions just said by the town planner.
You have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll rotate between the two, Mr. Kreider and Ms. Smith. Mr. Kreider gets the second this time. Discussion on the approval motion. Hearing none. Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Joe?
I couldn't tell whether that was Tim or Hal.
It was Joe?
That was Joe.
Oh.
Joe
sorry.
says yes.
Okay. Tim?
Joe says yes.
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes.
We have to get, I'm
Okay,
sorry, I'm having
That's
hard
okay.
time hearing.
I'm sorry.
okay. So we stand subdivisions approved. But yes, Tim, I agree with you. That's a topic of a workshop.
Yeah,
For
I would like to
for the
discuss
town.
it just to
Yeah.
explain the problems that we've had to our select person representative.
Sure.
In the past.
Okay.
This is Roscoe again. Just one question. You want me to give you 3 paper copies and give you the Mylar, and you are going to record the Mylar, correct?
That's, no, you can record it if you, I don't know if, I'd have to look and see if,
We would need Bob to sign the
I need to
Mylar.
sign
yeah,
it.
before
he's
it's
gonna
recorded.
sign it, and if you wanted to go record it yourself, you can do that. We've had that happen before.
Okay, because I know in the old days that's the way they did it, but more recently most towns, the town does it, so there's no shenanigans.
Oh.
Plans get changed.
Well,
But,
the policy Northwood has is that our standard practice is we do send it to the registry, we mail it, and the only time that does not happen is if the person whose stamp is on the plan requests to record it, then we do allow only that person to take it to the registry.
Okay, so I will give you the Mylar and let you handle that, if that's good.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay,
We'll
I'll get
sign
the
it
orders
once we get
set
there.
next week and we'll get your Mylars. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So next up is case 21-2. Joe and Judy King. And they are here in the meeting.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And I'll open 21-2 for discussion. Do we receive any public comment for the town on this case in the weeks between?
Nope.
Okay.
I haven't seen any.
Okay, just like to double check with that. Maybe before we get proceeding, is there anyone in the meeting tonight who would like to speak on case 21-2 regarding Joe and Judy King, boundary line adjustment? If so, you need to unmute yourself. Okay, hearing none, I'll close public comment on 21-2. Okay, any adjustments or changes that needed to be made, information that had requested between last time and this time, comments from town staff or the board?
I don't believe so. If Mr. Newman wouldn't mind, I would suggest introducing yourself because your label says Scott Frankowitz.
I'm on Scott's computer right now. Yeah, I'm John Newman, licensed mayor.
Thank you. I knew you weren't Scott Frankowitz, but I was going to ask if we called on you.
I was just waiting to see when that was going to happen.
Okay. James beat me to it, which is fine. Thank you. Okay. Pull up. Oops, that's done. We did regional impact. I'm looking at your staff report, James.
I hate it when you go quiet. I think everything's crashed.
Nope, I'm sorry. It's filed. I'll keep moving. It looks like everything's been addressed.
Yep, so I noted in my staff report that some of the parcels are existing non-conforming based on our current code. I'm interpreting these as either not making those non-conforming situations worse or improving the state of the non-conforming situation, and therefore permitted by the zoning ordinance and the sections that deal with non-conformities. The state and local permits, this is a transfer of a de minimis amount, 110 square feet in 2 tracts that's just being traded. So I don't believe that a state subdivision permit is going to be necessary for that, but ultimately an HDES subsurface is the one that makes that decision. For de minimis things like this before, we have not kept that as a condition of approval for the applicant, but they should be aware that if they want to make sure that they have dotted all of their I's and crossed all of their T's, they may want to reach out to NHDES themselves to make absolutely certain.
Okay.
And I have only 3 conditions of approval recommended for this one. They have not changed as since they were written into my staff report, but those are generally for those watching at home prior to the signing of plans. 1, provide certification of monument installation as required by section 3.06 of the subdivision regulations. 2, deliver 3 signed and stamped copies of the paper plan and 1 signed and stamped Mylar to the town for signature. And a condition subsequent, number 3, record the plat with the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds within 1 year.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Someone needs to specify for what.
Motion to approve with conditions as stated by Mr. Burdine.
Second.
Case 21-2, please, somewhere in there.
21-2.
Thank you. Okay, motion by Ms. Betty Smith, second by Mr. Kreider. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. Susan could do a roll call vote, please.
Hal,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes,
and Bob.
Yes. Okay, you're approved. When you get the paper copies and the Mylar to the town, they'll let me know. I'll sign them and then you'll get the copies back.
Great. The monument was set 2 days ago, so that's all set.
Okay. Good.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob, I'm going to need to step away for just a minute. I'll be
Yes,
right back.
we're not quite at 8 o'clock, but we're at a good breaking point. So why don't we take a couple minute break, 2, 3, 4 minutes.
We're on a break.
You going to sleep, Betty?
How you doing up there? I heard a couple of snickers.
Just want clear skin. Try so-called super creams. I even tried House My Kitchen on my fix. And did any of that work? Nope. Then I found Proactive.com. They have 3 different systems, clinically proven ingredients, and tested by dermatologists that help my skin clear. And their skin too. They have a simple, two-step system designed for you. So by the way, you're going to set a record low high temperature. Lincoln 5 degrees, Oklahoma City 21 degrees. Tiny A's records back in 1905. Back to that, records that have stood for over 100 years. All what this all means, though, is the cold air is there. And if we took some moisture into it, we could be a great blockbuster storm. Yeah, and to cause that one. This is very important. I needed to lose weight, but I had to move in. I wanted the food delivered to my door. Hey, everyone's talking about like anytime I have a question. Not food that tastes great. To get results that last. And that's time for me. Save 50%. Business man, his name's Ryan. Rose, American, July, and it almost proved that any category can be upended very quickly.
Tim, while we're still on break, you will, let's say, we are recording. I'll just put it this way. Don't take, I hope it comes across adequately. If you want to watch TV, that's fine, because I don't, but you'll need to mute your camera.
I'll turn it down when the break's over.
Okay. Makes no difference to me, however you want to do it.
Bob, I'm going to turn off my camera because I'm going to be eating, but I will be here.
Okay. Okay. We're back. Well, why don't we get, we'll be back from break at 7:55. And next up will be case 21-3, Camp Yavna, Russell Bassett. And I believe, pardon me? There we are.
I was going to simply say, Hal, if you're going to be eating, you can turn off your mic too.
Okay.
Yeah, good idea.
Yep, that's true. Depends. We'll tell you whether we get noise or not. Okay, and note for the record that Mr. Jandeber has recused himself from this case and is removed from the voting designation. Okay. Why don't you bring us up to date on changes that have occurred and since we heard this last.
Mr. Chairman, can we have the ability to share the screen to show drawings?
I believe Susan can let you do that without any problem.
All set.
Good evening, Chairman Strobel and members of the board. Thank you for giving us the time to present to you tonight. My name is Justin Masick, and I'm an engineer at TF Moran. I'm joined here by Russell Bassett, the facilities manager for Camp Yavna, and Corey Caldwell, a principal at TF Moran. The plans we presented at last month's planning board meeting showed 4 proposed bunkhouses in addition to the existing MARC building. To avoid a possible delay in receiving plan approval, we've opted to remove 3 of the proposed bunkhouses from the scope of this project. Subsequently, during our last presentation, we only focused on the proposed bunkhouse B11 in the MARC addition. We've submitted revised plans that reflect the new scope of work, and I'll be walking through these shortly, shown on the screen right now. By the end of this month, we are planning to submit separate site plans for the 3 bunkhouses that have been removed from this scope. To provide a brief background on the project, it's located at 18 Lucas Pond Road on a 55-acre parcel map represented on the plan shown on the screen. Assessor's map 124, lot 15. The land is owned by Camp Yavna and is currently used as a Jewish overnight summer camp. The parcel is located in the general district, as well as the wetland conservation and steep slope overlay districts. The campground is situated to the south of Route 43 to the north shoreline of Lucas Pond. This project does not propose impacts to any of Northwood's conservation or overlay districts, and it's our understanding that no zoning relief is required. This project now proposes just the construction of 1 new boys bunkhouse B11 in addition to the existing MARC Infirmary building. Associated improvements include gravel pathways, an ADA accessible ramp to the MARC entrance, utility installation, and grading. So the primary intent of this project is to provide new campground facilities and that create better separation between campers and counselors throughout the property to help improve social distancing during the COVID-19 pandemic as requested by the state. It is important to note that Camp Yavna has no intent to increase the total occupancy on the campground. Instead, campers and counselors will be displaced from the existing bunkhouses to the proposed bunkhouse, and that will result in an equal number of maximum occupants in existing and proposed conditions. So that's a brief background. I know we kind of went over some of that in the last meeting, but I just wanted to catch you up to speed. And now we'll go through the revised plans and some of the changes that we made in an effort to keep things moving along and somewhat brief. We won't be showing the entire plan set, but we'll be focusing on the main sheets that have been revised. So for starters, the sheet being shown is the existing features plan, which is S1. And per the last planning board meeting, we were requested to show the sloped zones throughout the site, which are now reflected with the different colored hatchwork that you can see in the background of the plan. Additionally, we were asked to provide the maximum occupancy capacity to the plan, and we've done so. We'll zoom in on it here. So as you can see, the max number of staff is 175, and the maximum occupant capacity of campers is 375 for a total of 550 individuals. Next, we'll skip ahead to sheet C3, which is the sheet legend. We're kind of showing this to really show the total scope of work, which is now just bunkhouse B11 and the MARC edition, which are both inside of the rectangles here, and the cursor is pointing to both of these features. We'll jump ahead to sheet C5, which is our site layout plan. One more, Corey. So the site layout plan shows the location of the proposed bunkhouse and MARC addition, as well as gravel pathways, entrances, and stairs for each building. A front porch is shown for bunkhouse B11, which acts as the main entrance, while an emergency exit is located on the east side of the building. An ADA accessible ramp is shown on the southeast side of the MARC addition, as well as an emergency exit and staircase to the north of the building. We'll move forward to sheet C6, which is our grading and drainage plan. This plan shows proposed grades required for the construction of bunkhouse B11 in the MARC addition. Grading extents are minimized in this case because both of the proposed buildings are lifted off the ground using post and buried footings. As a result, the existing drainage patterns will remain mostly the same in post-construction conditions. And then we'll move forward to sheet C7, which is our utility plan. The sheet shows the proposed utilities that will service bunkhouse B11. including water, sewer, gas, and electrical. Proposed utility pole will be installed to support the overhead wire, leaving the south side of the proposed bunkhouse P11, which then will carry to an existing utility pole located south of the proposed utility pole. The MARP addition will use the same utility services that are currently provided to the existing MARP building. As far as updates go, that's pretty much the same plan set, but now it's just showing the new scope of work. So that concludes this presentation, unless Corey or Russell has anything to add. But we'd be happy to answer any questions or comments that the board may have.
Okay. Thank you. One of the little bit of research that I believe Linda Smith did, was dealing with the number of campers that were available or allowed on site, however you want to think about it. You recommended 100, exactly that, 375 campers and 175 staff. Reading back through minutes that the planning board has on record, looking at September 24th, 2009,
Mr. Chairman, my name is Sylvester. Could I speak to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I did receive the same letters from, or information from Linda about notes from previous meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Previous planning board notes I received from Linda indicate that the following: in 2005, there were 335 campers and 125 staff. In 2007, there were 300 campers, and in 2009, there were 300 campers.
Yep.
Since then, in 2013 and 14, a new boys' carom bunk was built, holding 36 campers. In 2017 and 18, a new boys' bunk was built, holding 20 campers, and a new girls' bunk was built, holding an additional 20 campers, for a total of 76 new campers, bringing the overall total to 376 campers.
Perfect.
Buildings were built after review of the existing leach field capacity and were okayed by the planning board. The new site plan does not increase the number of campers or impact the existing leach fields, as we are just spreading out the campers and reducing the number of kids in each bunk.
Thank you very much, because I was looking at this, and I know I've been on the board a long time, but I knew there was another application after 2009, and I was trying to do the math. So you're one step ahead of me. Thank you. I knew.
I'd like to state that.
Yeah, I knew that you had stated
for us.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'd also like to state it's crunch time for us for meeting COVID-19 requirements.
Sure.
And we'd really appreciate moving this forward tonight so we can get these projects completed in time for the upcoming season.
Mm-hmm.
The state is consistently changing requirements for us, and we really need to move forward with this as soon as possible.
Okay.
Thank you for your
noted.
help in advance.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add a comment about those numbers.
Sure.
Going back, years back, what precipitated the issue relative to the actual number of campers was that there were a number of complaints regarding drop-off and pickup times. And that's what the original basis was, as well as the septic fields that are on site. Those issues were addressed, and there is an entirely different traffic pattern now, my understanding, than what was in place when the concerns about traffic were occurring.
Okay. Yep. And that.
I can also speak to that also. In the upcoming year, this coming year, it's going to be even less because we're not going to allow parents to drop campers off, and they're going to be coming in by bus because of COVID restrictions. So that's going to be changing dramatically.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that update. Going through the staff report, what do we still have left?
So I think a number of issues in the staff report were resolved by removing the 3 other buildings from this proposal. For example, the building that was located within the shoreland setback has been removed from this proposal, so that's not an issue. I appreciate the addition of the slopes overlay so that we can compare that with the building locations. So I think the the big item that we need to address is the requested waiver that was provided, and that waiver was phrased very generally. As I state in my staff report, I'm interpreting the waiver as it was submitted as a request to waive any consideration of stormwater consideration as part of this submission. We have in the past issued waivers to entire sections, but we do them very seldom. I think that, I would agree that it certainly isn't necessary to have a full stormwater manual or anything like that for 2 buildings on a very large site. But in consideration of that waiver, I would appreciate a little bit of feedback from the applicant about what since we are adding impervious surface, about how far from those bunkhouses would conditions on the ground take to absorb the flow of that additional stormwater. Are we talking within 10 feet of the building? Conditions are going to be as normal, within 20 feet, etc. Again, I'm a little bit less concerned with this proposal now than I would have been if we were talking stormwater flow from a building within the shoreline setback. But I would still like at least the applicant to represent what they think those impacts are going to look like. And then the only other thing that I wanted to note, I think we can all infer it from Mr. Bassett's comments, but I want to state it explicitly on the record, that my interpretation of that 550 person capacity is that is what is suggested as the normal operational capacity under normal conditions, i.e., what was analogous to when it was operating in 2019 and how it would operate again post-COVID. So if there are people who are wondering, well, is that 550 campers the COVID number and it's going to jump back up after that? That's not how I'm interpreting it. I'm interpreting that as the normal site capacity. Mr. Bassett, is that correct?
That's correct. That's the normal site capacity. For COVID-19, it'll be less than that due to state requirements.
Thank you. Good to clarify.
Yep, and what we would be concerned with as part of site plan review is the normal operational capacity. So if there are additional restrictions during COVID, those are important, but I think they're outside of what we are concerned with here.
And I seem to recall, and maybe Linda can chime in, or Mr. Bassett or someone else, that in the 13-14 application for the bunkhouses that we added, or that were added then, I believe there was a more complete stormwater analysis done. Does that ring a bell to anybody? Or maybe my brain is just confusing with other cases, but
I can only say that my understanding is that there has been an effort over many years to address the stormwater issues on site, bringing the septic, the different septic areas, removing the lagoon.
Sure.
All of it's been moving in a direction.
Oh, yeah. I
the
completely
board
agree
has been hoping to see.
Yep, I agree on that. I was thinking more in specific in dealing with I agree with James that in case for 2 buildings of complete stormwater analysis is certainly excessive. But I would.
Well, Bob, can I interject or?
Well, let me finish my statement.
Well, they will be coming back for the other buildings at some point in the near future.
Yes, that was going to be one of my 2 comments was that if you're coming back for additional buildings, a more complete, because I think they're in a similar area, I believe. Is that not correct? Or they're fairly adjacent?
Yeah, they're fairly adjacent.
Okay. So it could be such a thing that a more complete stormwater analysis could be done with those later applications.
And then, Bob, if I could, the one other note that I would want to make is that if the board is amenable to approving the waiver, I would suggest that the waiver be conditioned upon adding a note to the plan identifying the requested waiver and the date of approval by the board.
Exactly, I was just going to say that.
And yeah, I believe Mr. Masek moused over the note that's currently there, so it would just need to be added to say that this has been approved. I think currently says it's pending review, and add the date of the approval.
Right. Okay. My other point was going to be that it could be such a thing in if the board was more amenable to it, to show some kind of stormwater remediation, even if it's just a trench drain or a French drain or a cistern, that would have that capacity. But for myself, I would tend to suggest to the board that we approve the waiver with the note saying both the waiver approval, but that the expectation is that on future applications, a more complete stormwater analysis would be shown. No, that's just me.
Bob, again.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Interject or just add.
Go ahead.
Well, I think the points you made are fine. The observations I would make are that the existing, as described, these 2 additional buildings, or the ones that were, it's 2, isn't it, or is it 3?
Correct. It's 2.
Yeah. Are partly because they're raised buildings. They're not, in fact, in any substantial way that I can understand, affecting water absorption. So, I mean, they would continue doing what they're doing now. That entire site, I mean, I've been over the entire site on a number of occasions, and there is no, I mean, if there is, I'm overlooking a couple of little paved places, but it's substantially gravel road. So most of the site is pervious to water.
Right.
So granted that in the future there might be, and especially something that's right within the what do we call it, the setbacks to the lake, that could be something of more important consideration in regard to what we're talking about here. But I don't see anything here that really affects runoff. In other words, if it's working now, it's going to work afterwards. the fact that a building that's raised is going to be sitting there, same amount of water occurs when it rains, regardless of whether the building's there. Just depends on how that water, if the building in fact was blocking, then it would become an issue, but it's not. They're raised. So it seems to me the same absorption will take place. So there's a non-issue in regard to these two, and I think these two buildings, and in regard to what you said, in the future, yeah, there are a couple of the buildings may be of more, a little more substantial consideration from us.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Corey Caldwell from TF Moran. Just a couple of points to help you feel better about the drainage. First, in your site plan regulations, section 99C, streets and alleys, 1C, it says that a drainage analysis and stormwater management plan prepared by an engineer licensed in the state of New Hampshire, including a comparison between pre-development and expected post-development conditions, shall be submitted for any site development that involves cumulatively disturbing 20,000 square feet or more.
Mm-hmm.
All 5 of these buildings, the 2 that are proposed tonight, as well as the 3 that you'll be reviewing next month, are less than 20,000 square feet.
Oh, good.
That's
okay.
one.
That's a good point.
Of the waiver. But secondly, and I think more importantly, these 2 buildings under consideration tonight, the cumulative project disturbance is less than 5,000 square feet. And the increase in impervious area to this 56-acre parcel is less than 0.05 of an acre. So it's if you do the math, it's a 0.08 increase in impervious area. That, coupled with the fact that the closest point of any new structure is about 275 feet from Lucas Pond. What's happening to this stormwater from these buildings as it's being infiltrated into the ground? There's no cumulative impact to any offsite, and it eventually goes into Lucas Pond. But I guess the way I would describe it is it's kind of like putting a Dixie cup full of water in Lucas Pond. And hopefully that makes the board feel better. But I think for those 2 reasons, that, the regs speak to more than 20,000 square feet, and the math that we've done shows such an insignificant increase in impervious area, we're confident that any drainage analysis would show no change. And that's really why we requested the waiver.
Okay. Thank you. I personally was not too worried about it, having taken a look at that math myself, knowing that this is a very small change in impervious surface. It's more the letter, filling out the letter of the law. Okay, any questions, comments from the board? From anything else from town staff?
No, I think, yeah, a statement like what the applicant just made was, what I was hoping to get into the record, at least as far as their position. So if the board is persuaded by that, you do still need to act on the waiver. And I would still recommend that condition just to update the note.
Okay. So at this point, before we start acting, I will open public comment on this case. Let me see if I can pull up Zoom a little better. Whoops. If there is anyone in the meeting who would like to speak on case 21-3, you need to get my attention somehow, either saying something or unmute, turn on your video. Okay, I have the only one in the meeting who is not involved in this case is Mr. Bill Zarch.
I'm the executive director of Yadna. I'm
okay.
Watching from Boston. So
good enough. Thank you.
Yep.
You are involved then.
I am involved.
Okay. So hearing no one interested in the public comments at this point in time, I don't think we've received any at the town hall that I need to read. Okay, I'll close public comment on 21-3 then. And anything further from the board? I would entertain them.
Yeah, well, with that, Bob, I'll make a motion that we
Okay.
approve as amended or as submitted with the reduction in building sites, the 21-3 for Camp Yavna.
Hold that thought. We're not quite there yet, Joe.
Well, I thought, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
We're not.
Thought we were.
No, we're not. We got to do the waiver first.
Oh. I thought that James had gone over those, but yeah. No,
Well, we
sorry.
did go over it, but they've still requested that we still have to decide on it.
Good
So
enough.
I would entertain a motion to approve the waiver of section 9D.
Okay, I'll make that motion to approve the waivers.
Okay.
As
Second.
submitted.
Okay, and we have a second by Ms. Betty Smith. And I probably should have stated this in the forefront, as we discussed the two aspects, or one aspect of approval of the waiver is adding a note to the plan set to, if the waiver is approved, of the date and the time of the, or the date of the approval and the section of the approval. Discussion on the waiver. Is there, I brought it up in my discussion about the idea of a more complete stormwater analysis for the multiple buildings further on. Is there interest in that?
Bob, this is Hal.
Yes, go ahead, Hal.
I think what Joe said, or somebody else said, the other ones that are closer to the water, I think probably need some analysis just to prevent and make sure we're not having any erosion problems and getting silt and stuff into the pond.
But those are not dealt with tonight, so.
Correct.
Okay.
I thought you were asking for input on overall. Maybe I mixed.
No. More, well, it was more the idea that well, never mind. Okay.
It would be hard to put it in now, Bob. It's
Yeah,
just,
exactly.
We should consider it at the time.
Good enough. That's what I wanted to double check. I'm fine, absolutely fine with that. Okay. Anyone else comments on the motion to approve the waiver? Hearing none. Susan could do a roll call vote, please.
Joe,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Hal,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay, so the waiver's been approved.
So, Mr. Chair, since, and I believe the last time these applicants made a change to their site plan, it was a very similar situation. Since we're dealing with a situation where, we're not expecting any change to the impact on the septic, we're not expecting any change on the impact to the driveway. Those are permits that we can feel fairly safe that they're not going to be relevant here. Similarly, since we removed from consideration the one structure that was going to need zoning relief for the slopes and the one structure that was potentially going to need a shoreline permit, the only condition that I have for this at the moment is deliver 3 signed and stamped copies of the plan for signature.
Okay.
And that's all I've got.
Okay, that sounds pretty straightforward.
Well, with those conditions stated by the planner, I'd like to again make a motion that we approve this submittal
Case 21-3.
21-3.
I don't know if you had it there with you or Joe or not, so.
Well, memory slips.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. McCaffrey. Do we have second?
Second.
Second and third by Ms. Betty Smith and Mr. Hal Kreider, because I couldn't tell who got it faster. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Susan, can do a roll call vote, please.
Al,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay.
So Bob, I'd like to say now that that's over, that thanks a lot. I know who my friends are. Russ is going to expect me to fly back, go to work Monday. Thank you, Bob.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we look forward to presenting the other 3 buildings in the next couple months.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll look forward to seeing him. Thank you all.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. And Susan can steal the screen back. And note for the record, Mr. Jandeber is back from recusal and is added again to the voting designation. Okay, internal business. Are we dealing with the rule change tonight?
I think that we might need to make a few changes on the fly, but if the board is open to me sharing my screen and doing that, I would still request that we move forward with that, simply for the reason that it would still allow us to count tonight as one of the times that the changes are read prior to voting on this, and keep us on pace to adopt the changes at the March 11th meeting.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So I have an introduction as usual explaining the blue underlines and the red strike throughs for my changes. As we discussed at the last meeting, it is a little bit cumbersome and takes up some of our time to have to read all of the proposed changes into the record at every meeting. So we are suggesting that rather than read them, I've changed that language to presented for discussion at 2 consecutive meetings prior to the meeting at which the vote is taken. So it doesn't change the timeline. It just hopefully makes the meetings go a little bit faster. And unfortunately, we still have to play by the old rules for this one. So once we are done with any changes we choose to make, I'm going to have to read all of this. I apologize. Then the other change that we were doing was under the technical review process. And this was something where most of what we were doing was to accommodate the Board of Selectmen's proposed process for allowing TRC to approve certain de minimis 674-41 proposals. I had also made some minor changes to the composition of TRC, not to change who was part of it, but to refer to departments instead of people. For example, for most of the 674-41 meetings, we were not contemplating that I would participate. It would more likely be Linda representing the land use department. But we wanted to refer to the land use department so that, she or I could participate interchangeably if need be. Something that we have talked about since then is the fact that so many of these other steps refer to the town planner or the board administrator. First of all, the board administrator is no longer Linda's job title. And second of all, some of these actions, again, may be things that Linda or Susan might do, Linda or I might do, or if there was a situation in the future where the town did not have a contract planner, but the internal land use department staff would still need to fill those functions. We thought that it made sense to sort of go back through all of the technical review process and refer to the land use department shall do this instead of an individual within it. So if you're amenable to that, some of those changes might need to be things that we need to work through on the fly. And then number 8 was all new language. But we also have a further complication for that, in that the last time we spoke about this as a group, we had discussed that the people who would be part of the TRC would be meeting to process the backlog of the permits that they had while we worked through these changes. And the group did meet and spent more time probably discussing the rules and procedures for how they envisioned acting on these rather than discussing the permits themselves. I was not part of that discussion, but Linda was, so she may be able to represent that in more detail. But I think the short version is that those other departments that are part of TRC, I think, are a little bit uncomfortable with the details of the process as they are currently proposed. They don't want to have to necessarily meet regularly for all of these and have approval authority for another set of meetings that would be subject to 91A. So my understanding is that they would prefer, rather than setting up a new TRC access group who is meeting and acting as a board, I think they would still prefer for all departments to forward comments to the planning board like usual. So they would be contemplating that 674 or 41 applications, just like everything else, would need to be filed no later than 10 a.m. on the first business day of the month. Everything that we get that month would still need to go to the planning board. The building inspector would still be able to approve them, as he has been authorized by the Board of Selectmen immediately upon getting those comments from the planning board. But we would at least be keeping that that portion of the process in closer to how it's laid out in statute rather than how it is in here. So I think we might need to also make some changes here. So I guess I would defer to the board as to how you would want to go about doing this. If you don't want to wordsmith things on the fly as a group, I can go back and prepare these for 2 weeks from now with those line item changes. We would just be losing 2 weeks on it. Or if you do feel comfortable making those, we can.
I have 2 questions.
Go ahead.
Number 1, what's the hurry? So I'm in favor of having them rewritten and sent to us so we can look at them. Number 2, so how many times last year did the TRC committee meet?
The TRC committee has met, I don't know that we've met in a year or 2. We don't meet regularly. It's something that we have normally thought of as a group that we would pull together for something that's unusually large or complicated. And there hasn't been anything that we have felt the need to pull all of the departments into one room to discuss. We certainly wouldn't pull it together for, for example, every minor boundary line adjustment that we are proposing. or that we have in front of us. I think the big point of discussion with this one, though, was that we were contemplating, in order to speed some of those, de minimis building permits along, that they would meet, potentially as frequently as weekly, to handle any of those if they had been filed.
Can you move the, I've been afraid, I don't have anywhere to print, so I don't have a printout. Can you move that down so I can see the bottom of the page? Where all the blue writing was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So, I mean, it appears to me, reading number 8, that we're putting a lot more emphasis in the TRC and having meetings. And I always worry that, we do something or make a new law or make a new whatever that's generally ignored. And I'm just not aware of this TRC meeting group ever meeting, and maybe they have, but I'm just not aware of it. So that's why I'm wondering, why can't we wait another 2 weeks? And, when do they meet and if ever? Have there been meetings?
Yeah, it's very infrequent. Like I said, we did not, I am positive we did not meet in 2020. I don't believe we met in 2019 or 2018 either.
Okay, so and that's my issue. So I'm just wondering why we're doing this if they never meet. And it sounds like a good idea that they would meet. However, getting that group together in one meeting, it sounds to me like nigh on the impossible.
Right. And so my understanding, coming into this based on what was approved by the Board of Selectmen, was that we were writing policies under the assumption that they would meet more regularly for this purpose. It sounds like after that initial meeting of the group and talking through this, they would prefer not to handle it that way. And that was something that I wasn't aware of. I think they were meeting shortly after I had sent my initial draft to all of you. So that's what
that's my concern. And I'm not trying to belittle any of this. It's just, the more minds you get on an issue, the better a result you'll get.
Yep.
But if they're not going to meet, why go through it?
No, I agree. And what I'm saying is that, based on that feedback from them, it would involve, fairly substantial rewrites to number 8, and pulling out that emphasis on how frequently they meet.
So my point again is that I would rather see it in writing.
Go ahead, Linda.
Can I give just a summary of what my takeaway was from that one and only TRC Access Subcommittee meeting we had?
All right.
Well, let me go back just for a minute and give a little history of how this came to be. A former building inspector, out of concern for the amount of time that was deemed to take place relative to these small projects, plus the level or the threshold of the smaller building permits requiring an engineered plan. So this was all brought to the Board of Selectmen and they made some changes. But the building inspector had the idea of this 674 group solely for these particular residential building permits. Well, when James got involved and brought up the fact, in which I really didn't give a lot of thought to because it was being brought forward by the building inspector, was that the subcommittee would need to meet under 91A. I think his thought was that he was going to send an email out to the fire chief, police chief, highway, and they would send their findings back and he would pool that and that would constitute this little TRC group. Well, that wasn't able to happen that way. And the subcommittee needs to meet under 91A, just like any other subcommittee. Well, we held the first one after several glitches and notice and different things. So we met this past week and the 3 important departments that were there obviously were fire, police, and highway. Well, to take an hour of time from the, those three folks to come to this meeting, and it just seemed like a big giant waste of people's time. And so there was a lot of discussion on, could this be achieved? Was this productive? And it really seemed very inefficient to do it this way. So I went, and I will say that the town administrator, Walter, was also sat in on the meeting. So the two takeaways I had was it definitely was not going to work the way it was proposed to be as initially. And the other side of the coin, which the town administrator brought up, as well as the three people sitting in the room, brought up concerns that they would like to see for bigger projects, for the actual TRC group as it was initially put in place, to start being put back in when larger projects come to the planning board, that the TRC group could sit down and provide and gather their thoughts. It would be run by the planner. And that was the original intent. That's typically how TRC meetings are handled with the staff. And then it would all go to the planner and he would include that in his review of the projects that would come to the planning board. So the basic outcome was this wasn't going to work. We need to rethink that. And we also need to go back to the drawing board, and maybe not now and maybe not until after we get through town meeting and have a budget, because we can't spend any extra money now. But we need to start looking at the potential for having these TRC meetings, whether they were once a month, once a quarter when something came in, whatever. But they could be very valuable, but in this sense, they're not. So what everybody thought was the way to go would be to go back to the way we were doing it before. When these came in, they would be put on the regular planning board agenda for the meeting, and with the little sheets that would have building departments, comments, fire. And because it would be a public meeting by the planning board as part of their regular business, it would cover 91A. The building inspector could just gather email comments ahead of time from the highway, fire, and police. And it, we would get a pattern going where that would be the process and put that back in place, as opposed to trying to have a separate subcommittee that meets in order to achieve this, which definitely turned out to be counterproductive.
Okay.
So Linda, to Tim's point about what the hurry was, I think, again, when I was writing this draft the first time, we did feel we were under a time crunch because we wanted the policy in place as soon as possible, so that this group could operate and clear out some of those backlogged permits as soon as possible. The impression that I'm getting is that is no longer the case. And if we want to proceed with just fixing up the rules for normal TRC, we've got a bit more time. Is that your sense too?
Yes. The only thing that is up in the air that needs to be looked into would be whether or not we could go back. And I don't know that there's anything in those guidelines that would prevent that, the BOS guidelines, to prevent us going back to the practice we had before of the first of the month and having them at the meeting should one of these applications come in.
Okay.
I mean, the board does voluntary mergers that way. There's other business that is minor that has been a part of the planning board's responsibility over time.
Yep.
Uh,
Go ahead, Joe.
Opportunity. Okay, thanks. I guess I'm a little confused, and that wouldn't be the first time, but there is, I'm reading this as a, well, let me rephrase this. I'm not sure where the planning board comes into this as stated. Like, it says the Board of Selectmen may, at their discretion, delegate to the TRC review of certain de minimis applications for building permits. Well, that's not us to begin with.
But Joe, let me interrupt you. Where it comes in is if a building permit comes in on a Class 6 road,
yes,
town or private maintained road, which is 674-41.
Yep.
Board of Selectmen wants comments from planning board.
Not only do they want them, it's required by
The statute requires the planning board to be given the opportunity to comment on all 674-41 applications. Joe, this also, I would agree that, apart from you having the right to comment on these, the rest of it doesn't really deal with the planning board per se. But since the rules for TRC live in your rules, this was where we felt that we needed to document how we were going to do that, because the TRC doesn't have their own sort of founding policy document separate from this one. But
well, okay, if I gather the, I'm listening to Linda and various other comments, but if I'm gathering the idea here, the purpose of this is to kind of consolidate the effort where we become obligated to ask for reviews from various parties, police, fire, etc., and then comment ourselves on any impacts that we see. And we've been asked that before, obviously, but it seems like this is creating an entity, the TRC, that would kind of consolidate this effort. It's in the past, these have come in piecemeal. Usually we get comments or very minimum replies from each of these departments, but so I see the effort here maybe to consolidate the commentary that would go to the select board for their then making a decision, since it comes under their purview in the end, right? If that's it, somehow it may be just me. I have to go over this maybe a few more times and see as Tim was suggesting, I'd like to look at this with a few minor, whatever amendments that are being proposed. I'm kind of getting a sense, though, that the TRC becomes a larger entity in and of itself, that even though the planning board is part of the TRC, I'm just not, and it may be me again, I say that, but I'm not quite clear that it isn't becoming its own little operation.
No, you're correct. That the purpose of a technical review committee is to consolidate all of those comments and make them more streamlined and get everybody in a room together so that you don't have to, respond to or poke some other department to send you comments over several weeks. If you're all together, you can all hand over your comments or say them out loud and write them down, and you're good. And you are also correct that what we were contemplating with this draft was, making that TRC group a little bit more official and giving them a new responsibility. And what Linda and I are saying is that between me writing this and sending it around to all of you, and tonight, that group met and isn't sure that that's a great idea. So I'm getting the sense from all of you that Now that we are feeling less pressure to do this quickly, probably the best thing to do is for me to scrap this draft and take a couple weeks to prepare some more appropriate revisions for a TRC that would actually work and be useful and functional for all of you. And then we can discuss that draft, once I get it out to all of you.
Well, James, I like your reappraisal. Yeah, I just, there's different sections here, just the wording. I'm not putting a fault on you here. I realize, you were trying to cobble together something, but I'm just not reading this as straightforwardly as perhaps I think the intention is. That's where I'm having a bit of a stumble. So yeah, I'd like to see you make an additional effort. Appreciate the effort so far. I'd just like to see this refined in some fashion.
Okay.
I can definitely be guilty of overthinking things. So I'm happy to do that.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, the two who have spoken have essentially agreed with you that number 8 needs to be revised. I'm not opposed to that at all. As far as the rest of it goes, would you scroll up just a bit to review 1 and 3? Actually, just number 3, because that's the only one that's looking to be 4 actually changed.
Yeah, so the other thing that I mentioned, number 4, I explicitly made changes to take out planner and building inspector and replace them with the land use department and the building department. Yeah, and as I said, I think I would like to continue to carry those changes all the way through this section to refer to the departments. But if I'm taking another crack at this whole thing anyway, then I'll do a detailed pass and I'll show you all of those changes once I've had a chance to go through it.
Okay.
Well, it would be nice to see this come up on the select board calendar so that they could look at it. My screen says your internet thing is unstable. I hope I don't lose you. But anyway, it'd be nice to see that the select board might enter into this discussion. Again, none of it bothers me. I just, why make rules and committees and everything if in 3 years they don't meet? That's one of my points. Did I lose you?
Nope.
No, we're still here.
Human loud and clear.
I think that was an important point that came out of that meeting was that there is a real need for the bigger projects to go back to having the technical review committee. And again, the town administrator was set in on the meeting, and I felt that he strongly supported and even offered himself to be a part of those meetings.
I have a question about that, Linda. Who decides? Is it the select board that decides that the technical review committee will meet on a large project, or is it the planning board that would say?
It has typically been at the call of the planner. So that needs to be put in here somewhere, that if we're going to have it, that the planner would have the option of calling for a technical review committee, and that should happen a couple times a year to show that it's worthwhile, in my opinion.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Sounds like you have some work in front of you, James.
Yep, understood.
Yep. I like the concept, but I think just
They
Well,
can't all be
anyway.
winners on the first draft.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think
I'll
any
take
of us
I
are
am-
criticizing.
Yeah, I
I'll
don't
take
think it
some
was
of the
meant as-
responsibility as well, because I think we were going so fast in one direction, and it's only been a couple of days that things did somewhat of a reversal, but I think it's been a real learning process, and just even getting all the departments together that would typically participate in the TRC is something I think has been very beneficial, and I think James has got a good sense of what needs to be done to bring that to back together again.
Good. Okay. Yeah, it's always interesting trying to setting up one aspect and then finding the target is moved.
Yep.
Mhm.
No, that's never happened to me in my life. I hear the sarcasm. Okay, anyone else? What else do we have on for tonight? We got 3 minutes before 9 o'clock. If somebody wants
Motion
to,
to adjourn.
okay, we have a second?
Well, if we have 3 minutes before we adjourn, we can all wish Susan a belated happy birthday. It was
Oh,
yesterday.
we could even sing.
No, I mean,
Birthday to
sure.
you,
Speak for
happy
yourself.
birthday to you.
Everybody's been singing to me.
Hal, keep in mind that this is currently live on YouTube
Yeah,
it's
and
also-
being recorded for posterity.
Yes.
All the more reason.
Now we know.
All the more reason.
The pain of posterity.
Okay.
I was hoping for a Grammy. Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second,
Second.
And a third,
yeah, fourth.
fourth, and a fifth, and that means we're all in favor.
Okay.
I'll take that as a vote. Happy birthday, Susan.
Happy
Happy
birthday. and
birthday.
Susan.
Good
Happy
meeting.
birthday and good night.
Yeah, good night. Thank you all.
Night all.
Good night, all.
Linda and Susan, are you both off on Monday as well?
We're
Yes.
still recording.
Oh.